Chosen one, this is your confirmation. Do not leave this season yet. What God is preparing for you is far closer than you think. Have you ever noticed that some of the most valuable things in life remain invisible until the precise moment you are capable of appreciating them? This is one of the quiet patterns woven throughout both human experience and the spiritual journey. We often assume that if something is good for us, God would place it immediately into our hands. Yet Scripture and experience suggest something far different. God is less interested in satisfying our impatience than he is in preparing our character. A blessing given before its proper season can become a burden rather than a gift. Many people spend years believing they are unnoticed. They wonder why relationships never seem to develop, why affection feels one-sided, or why every attempt to find lasting love ends with disappointment. What they rarely consider is that not every meaningful story begins with a dramatic introduction. Some stories begin quietly, almost invisibly, while God works behind the scenes in ways no human eye can observe. There is an interesting psychological truth here. Human beings naturally pay attention to what is obvious. We notice loud personalities, immediate attraction, public affection, and visible success. Our minds are drawn toward what demands attention. Yet genuine affection often develops in silence. Respect grows before romance. Admiration forms before words are spoken. Someone may quietly observe another person's kindness, integrity, resilience, or faithfulness for months or even years without revealing what has been growing inside their round heart. This should not surprise us. Some of the deepest realities in life are hidden during their most important stages. A tree develops its roots long before anyone admires its branches. A masterpiece exists first in the artist's imagination before it appears on canvas. Character itself is formed in private decisions that no audience ever witnesses. Why should love be any different? God frequently works in hidden places because hidden places protect fragile beginnings. If everything were immediately exposed, it could easily be damaged by pride, fear, insecurity, or the opinions of others. Waiting is not always evidence that nothing is happening. More often, waiting is evidence that something important is happening beneath the surface. Perhaps this is where many misunderstand divine timing. We often imagine waiting as empty space, as though life has paused until God decides to act. But waiting is rarely empty in God's economy. Waiting is active preparation. Every disappointment teaches discernment. Every unanswered prayer exposes hidden motives. Every delay strengthens patience, humility, and dependence upon the one who sees beyond the limits of our understanding. Consider how often we ask God to change our circumstances while he quietly begins changing us. Instead, we pray for the relationship, yet he develops wisdom. We ask for companionship, yet he teaches contentment. We request certainty, yet he cultivates faith. At first this seems unrelated to our desire, but over time we discover that the person we were becoming mattered just as much as the person we hope to meet. There is another side to this mystery that we often forget. If God is preparing you, is it not reasonable to believe he may also be preparing someone else? While you have been learning patience through unanswered questions, another person may have been learning courage after seasons of fear. While you have been healing from disappointment, someone else may have been discovering forgiveness. While you believed your story had become stagnant, another life was quietly moving toward the very intersection where your paths could one day meet. This possibility changes the entire meaning of delay. Suddenly, waiting is no longer evidence of rejection. It becomes evidence of coordination. God's work is not confined to one heart at a time. He shapes multiple stories simultaneously, bringing them together only when each has been strengthened enough to sustain what he intends to build. That is why hidden blessings should never be mistaken for absent blessings. There is profound wisdom in what God conceals, not because he delights in mystery for its own sake, but because revelation without preparation often produces confusion instead of gratitude. A gift arrives at its greatest value when the receiver has learned how to recognize it. So before asking why something has remained hidden, perhaps a better question is this: what has God been quietly building within me while I was searching for answers? The answer to that question may reveal that his silence was never neglect. It was careful craftsmanship. Remember this: God's greatest blessings are rarely delayed because he has forgotten you. They are often delayed because he refuses to give you anything less than his perfect timing. What if the greatest expression of love in your life has never been the loudest one? That thought challenges almost everything our culture teaches us. We have become accustomed to believing that love announces itself dramatically, that it arrives with unmistakable signs, overwhelming emotions, or unforgettable declarations. Yet if we observe human nature carefully, we discover that the deepest forms of affection often begin in complete silence. They grow unnoticed, hidden beneath ordinary moments, until one day we look back and realize something remarkable had been developing long before we recognized it. This is where many people misunderstand both love and God's way of working. We tend to search for excitement rather than consistency. We notice those who speak the most, who attract attention most easily, or who make grand promises. The quieter person, the one who consistently shows kindness, respect, and genuine concern, can easily fade into the background. Not because their love is weak, but because authentic love rarely competes for applause. There is a fascinating psychological reason for this. Human beings are naturally drawn toward novelty. Our minds are stimulated by what is unpredictable and emotionally intense. That is why people often mistake emotional excitement for lasting love. But excitement and devotion are not the same thing. Excitement captures attention for a moment. Devotion proves itself over time. God understands this difference far better than we do. Throughout life, he often teaches us to distinguish between what is merely attractive and what is truly valuable. One shines brightly for a season, while the other quietly endures. The first demands to be noticed. The second remains faithful, whether anyone is watching or not. Imagine someone who has admired you from a distance, not in an unhealthy or obsessive way, but with sincere respect. They have watched how you respond to disappointment, how you treat people who cannot benefit you, how you carry yourself through difficult seasons, and how your character remains steady when life becomes uncertain. While others judged appearances, this person noticed the qualities that endure. They saw not simply who you appeared to be, but who you were becoming. Isn't that remarkably similar to how God looks at us? God sees beyond appearances into the hidden places of the heart. He values faithfulness more than performance, humility more than popularity, and integrity more than image. If genuine love reflects God's character, then perhaps it should not surprise us that authentic affection often grows quietly before it is ever expressed openly. Many people miss these quiet beginnings because they are looking in the wrong direction. They become captivated by relationships that promise immediate fulfillment, while overlooking the person whose care has remained constant. Psychology speaks of selective attention, the tendency to notice only what aligns with our expectations, while ignoring what does not. Spiritually, something similar happens. We sometimes become so focused on the picture we have imagined that we fail to recognize the blessing God has placed within our reach. This does not mean every quiet admirer is necessarily the person God intends for you. Discernment remains essential. Not every feeling should be interpreted as divine direction, yet it does remind us that love worthy of trust is often revealed through patience rather than pressure, consistency rather than intensity, and sacrifice rather than self-interest. Think about the strongest relationships you have ever observed. They were probably not built upon endless excitement alone. They endured because two people continued choosing one another through ordinary days. They learned to listen before speaking, to forgive before resentment could grow, and to remain present when circumstances became difficult. These qualities rarely develop overnight. They are cultivated slowly, almost invisibly, through repeated acts of faithfulness. Perhaps this is why God allows certain relationships to remain hidden for a time. Public recognition is easy. Private preparation is much harder. Before two lives can truly support one another, both hearts often need to learn perseverance, wisdom, and emotional maturity. Otherwise, what begins with passion may end with disappointment, because the foundation was never strong enough to carry the weight of real commitment. As you reflect on your own life, consider the possibility that someone has valued qualities in you that you hardly notice yourself. Perhaps they have admired your resilience after hardship, your compassion toward others, or your quiet faith when no one else seemed to understand your journey. The characteristics you consider ordinary may be precisely what another heart finds extraordinary. God often uses the unnoticed parts of our character to create the deepest connections. Yet even more importantly, let this truth reshape how you see others. Instead of chasing only what immediately captures your attention, begin looking for the quiet evidence of genuine character. Learn to value consistency over charm, humility over appearance, and faithful actions over persuasive words. These are the places where lasting love most often takes root. The greatest love stories are rarely written in moments of noise. They are written in seasons of quiet faithfulness, where God is teaching two hearts to recognize what truly matters before He brings them together. There is a question that quietly follows many people through life, though they rarely speak it aloud. Why has this season taken so long? Why has God allowed so many disappointments, so many closed doors, and so many moments that seem to lead nowhere? We often assume that if God intends to bring two lives together, the process should be simple. Yet the deeper truth is that God is usually preparing people long before He introduces them to one another. The relationship is not the beginning of His work. It is often the result of years of invisible transformation. One of the greatest misconceptions about love is the belief that finding the right person is the ultimate goal. While that desire is understandable, it overlooks something essential. God is not merely interested in helping you discover the right person. He is equally committed to helping you become the right person. Those are not the same journey, though they eventually meet. Human beings naturally focus on external events. We measure progress by what we can see. If a new relationship begins, we believe something meaningful is happening. If nothing appears to change, we conclude that life has become stagnant. But God's work often moves in the opposite direction. Before He changes our circumstances, He changes our hearts. Before He rearranges our future, He reshapes our character. This process is rarely comfortable. In fact, it often feels like loss before it feels like growth. A failed relationship teaches discernment that success never could. A season of loneliness exposes the difference between needing companionship and learning contentment. Unanswered prayers force us to examine whether our trust depends upon receiving what we ask for, or upon believing that God's wisdom exceeds our own. Psychologically, this makes profound sense. Character is not formed when everything unfolds according to our plans. It is formed when reality refuses to cooperate with our expectations. Patience cannot exist without waiting. Forgiveness cannot exist without offense. Courage cannot exist without fear. Likewise, mature love cannot exist unless the heart has learned to place commitment above emotion and wisdom above impulse. Perhaps you have noticed that you are not the same person you were 5 years ago. The disappointments that once would have broken you now teach you resilience. Conversations that once triggered anger now invite understanding. Decisions once driven by emotion are now guided by reflection. These changes may seem small when viewed individually, but together they reveal something remarkable. God has not been wasting your time. He has been shaping your soul. Now consider another possibility. While this transformation has been unfolding within you, could it be that someone else has been experiencing their own season of refinement? While you were learning patience, they may have been learning humility. While you were overcoming fear, they may have been discovering faith. While you were healing from betrayal, they may have been letting go of pride or selfish ambition. This changes the entire meaning of divine timing. It is no longer about one person waiting for another to appear. It becomes the story of two separate journeys, gradually moving toward the same destination. God is not delaying because he enjoys postponement. He is coordinating. He is allowing both lives to develop the strength necessary to carry the blessing he intends to give. Think of an orchestra before a performance. Every musician practices independently. Each instrument is tuned separately. To an outside observer, the sounds may seem disconnected, yet the conductor understands that these individual preparations are essential. Only when every section is ready does the full symphony begin. Had one musician arrived unprepared, the beauty of the entire performance would have been diminished. God works with lives in much the same way. We often see only our own rehearsal, wondering why the performance has not started. We forget that the conductor is preparing every part of the composition. What feels like isolation may actually be coordination on a scale too vast for us to recognize. This truth also protects us from a dangerous temptation, the belief that we must force open doors God has not yet opened. Impatience convinces us that any opportunity is better than waiting, but wisdom understands that something unfinished should not be rushed. Fruit picked before it ripens never reaches its full sweetness. A foundation built too quickly cannot support the weight placed upon it. Likewise, relationships entered before both hearts are prepared often collapse beneath pressures they were never equipped to bear. The encouraging reality is that every lesson you have learned has meaning. Every tear has shaped compassion. Every disappointment has sharpened discernment. Every season of waiting has stretched your capacity for trust. None of it has been random. None of it has been forgotten. God has been quietly building qualities within you that will one day make sense in ways you cannot yet imagine. So instead of asking, "Why has this taken so long?" perhaps begin asking, "Who has God been helping me become?" That question shifts your attention from frustration to formation. It reminds you that your future is not determined merely by finding the right person, but by allowing God to complete the work he has begun within you. When God finally brings two prepared hearts together, it will not feel like chance. It will feel like the meeting of two stories that have been written side by side all along, each page turning at exactly the right moment according to his perfect wisdom. By now, you may be wondering about the mystery suggested in the title. The human mind is naturally drawn toward clues. We hear the possibility of an initial, a name, or a hidden sign, and immediately our imagination begins searching through memories. Faces come to mind. Old conversations suddenly seem significant. We start connecting details that we may have ignored before. This is simply how the mind works. It seeks patterns, because patterns give us the comforting feeling that we understand what is rich. Yet this is precisely the moment when wisdom becomes more important than curiosity. There is nothing wrong with noticing meaningful moments in life. God often speaks through circumstances, through scripture, through wise counsel, and through the quiet conviction of the heart. But there is a significant difference between paying attention to God and becoming obsessed with signs. Faith grows stronger when it is rooted in God's character, not when it depends upon decoding every mystery that crosses our path. That is why the first letter of someone's name, fascinating as it may seem, is never the miracle itself. The miracle is that God knows every detail of your life before you ever become aware of it. Long before you knew someone's name, God already knew their story. Before you ever wondered whether your paths would cross, he understood every conversation, every delay, every lesson, and every circumstance that would eventually bring two lives into the same chapter. This realization changes everything. Instead of asking, "What is the initial?" perhaps we should first ask, "What is God accomplishing?" One question satisfies temporary curiosity. The other transforms the way we live. Psychology teaches us that uncertainty often makes people desperate for certainty, even if the certainty they find is unreliable. This is why people can become consumed with symbols, predictions, coincidences, and hidden meanings. When life feels uncertain, almost any explanation becomes attractive, because it relieves the discomfort of not knowing. Spiritually, however, God invites us into a different kind of confidence. He rarely removes every uncertainty in advance. Instead, he teaches us to trust the one who already sees the complete picture. There is profound freedom in admitting that we do not need to know every detail if we truly believe the author of our story does. Imagine reading only one page from a great novel. The events might seem confusing, even unfair. A beloved character suffers. Opportunities disappear. Questions remain unanswered. If that single page were all you possessed, you might conclude that the story lacks purpose. Yet the author understands every chapter. What appears to be an unnecessary delay on page 20 may become the very reason for joy on page 200. God sees your life with that same complete perspective. We see isolated moments. He sees the entire narrative. This is why divine timing should never be reduced to formulas or predictions. If someone says, the answer lies entirely in a particular date, a specific sign, or the first letter of a name, caution is necessary. God's guidance is deeper than that. He is not leading his children through superstition, but through wisdom. His direction brings peace rather than confusion. It encourages discernment rather than anxiety. It draws people closer to him instead of making them dependent on endless speculation. That does not mean details are unimportant. God cares about details because he is a God of order, not chaos. Every meeting, every conversation, every unexpected opportunity can become part of his providence. But details are servants, not masters. They point beyond themselves toward the one who arranges them with perfect wisdom. Think back over your own life. There have probably been moments that seemed insignificant at the time. A conversation you almost didn't have. A place you almost didn't visit. A delay that frustrated you, or an unexpected decision that completely altered your future. Looking back, you can often see that what appeared random was quietly shaping your path. Not because you correctly interpreted every sign, but because God remained faithful even when you understood very little. This should bring tremendous peace. Your future does not depend upon your ability to solve every mystery. It depends upon God's ability to accomplish his purpose. And unlike human understanding, his wisdom never fails. So if you find yourself wondering about names, initials, or hidden clues, let those questions lead you toward deeper trust rather than greater anxiety. Let them remind you that the greatest evidence of God's presence is not that he reveals every secret immediately, but that he faithfully guides those who continue walking with him, even when the road ahead is not fully visible. In the end, the first letter is only a whisper. The true miracle is the hand of God, writing every chapter of your story with perfect timing, perfect wisdom, and a love that never makes mistakes.